But overall, things have finally become less dangerous. The Dahlbergs are summoned out of their hole to the church, or at least what's left of the church.
The sun became black as sackcloth. And a third of the earth was burnt up. A third of the trees and all the green grass.
Oh, Lord, not Revelations. Oh, you're going to bring up the giant grasshoppers, aren't you?
And then from the smoke came locusts on the earth with the power of scorpions.
Yes, of course. People need comfort. You bring up Revelations in the end of the world. These guys never go to the happy parts of the Bible, you know. Jeremiah 29:11, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." Gonna say anything like that? No. Giant fucking grasshoppers. That's what you give them, huh? By now, Denise is bleeding from the effects of the radiation, so Steve volunteers to take her and Danny to the hospital in Lansing. Up there, they finally got in contact with the outside, a presidential broadcast. There's a different voice on the versions that are out there. Originally, there was a much more Ronald Reagan-like tone. Not perfect, but it was much better than the stock voice that was done for the rebroadcast. Reagan himself got an early copy and wrote in his diary, "It's very effective and left me greatly depressed. My own reaction? We have to do all we can to have a deterrent and to see that there is never a nuclear war." If it seems like Reagan might have missed the point on the movie, a speech in the following year clarifies, "Deterrence is essential to preserve peace and protect our way of life, but deterrence is not the beginning and end of our policy towards the Soviet Union. We must and will engage the Soviets in a dialogue. We should always remember that we do have common interests, and the foremost among them is to avoid war and reduce the level of arms." There's a story that Reagan told Nicholas Meyer, or a friend of his, to pass on. There's disagreement on it. To not think that this movie had no effect on the INF elimination talks, because they did. But in this reality, he's speaking to a nation where deterrence didn't work.
There has been no surrender, no retreat from the principles of liberty and democracy for which the free world looks to us for leadership. We remain undaunted before all but Almighty God.
He does have those grasshoppers after all.
God bless you all.
That's it? That's all he's gonna say?
Hey, maybe we're gonna be okay. What do you want to hear?
I want to know who started it, who fired first, who preempted.
You're never gonna know that.
What difference does it make?
He doesn't know how badly we were hit.
He sure would have
but he
told
knows
us if they
hit
would have
just as
fired
bad.
first.
This was the sticking point for the military, by the way. They wanted the film to make it clear that the Soviets fired first and the U.S. responded. But the filmmakers didn't want to give on that point because it was part of the point. It doesn't matter who fires first. It doesn't matter who started it. The dead are still dead. The world may soon follow. If you have a world where nuclear weapons are aimed at our own species, we're asking for this kind of thing to happen.
You know what Einstein said about World War III? He said he didn't know how they were going to fight World War III, but he knew how they would fight World War IV with sticks and stones.
Yeah, but they'll fight World War V with mind powers! Dr. Oakes passes out in the hall, suffering from early stages of radiation sickness, but he awakens in the hospice where the terminal cases are, and we see the final fate of McCoy in the late stages of radiation sickness, babbling because he wants his shirt back, and then he's presumably buried in a mass grave. A body is wrapped in a blanket that looks like the one he'd been using throughout the film. The army truck dropping off food can't feed the living, though. A food riot breaks out, and Steven slips away. Like who started the bombs falling, it doesn't matter how that ends. It will end badly for somebody. Right now, it's really hard to find things to live for.
Are you really a doctor? You sure don't talk like one.
Well, actually, I'm the pizza man.
Tricking blind children, well, that seems like a good one. Oh, and they also have decided to taunt the Invisible Man by putting him in the ward with the blind people. None of you can see me! Yeah, no shit. Back home, the Dahlberg family have word on how to deal with the whole dropping radioactive bits of Denver on my crops thing. Burn the crops. Take the top few inches of soil off and plant food crops, primarily for human consumption. Well, Dahlberg naturally has two questions. One, where do you dump nearly 3 million cubic feet of dirt per farm? And what are you expecting to get out of the ground once you remove all the topsoil? I assume that you're not planning to grow tarantulas here, because it seems like this whole thing is going to be the Dust Bowl all over again. And I'm sure the last thing Dahlberg needs right now is Denise breastfeeding strange men in the barn. But when he gets home, he finds squatters and takes his shotgun just in case, only for one of the squatters to gun him down. Back at the university hospital, Dr. Oakes is readying himself to leave. Things are pretty grim. You know, if that was the day after, then that makes this, I know, the day after tomorrow. Hold me. Hold me until I die being chased by a radiation cloud or other crazy Roland Emmerich shit. Oakes definitely has radiation sickness by now. Hey, secondhand smoke, man. What are you trying to kill me here? He's made a decision to go home to Kansas City one last time, to at least see what's left of his home before he dies. As he heads there, we get some more sunshine, firing squads gunning people down, and news that Danny's blindness is probably permanent.
This isn't gonna work, is it?
It hasn't been that long, Danny. The nurse may still go back.
Your voice is shaking.
Oh, what do you expect, Daredevil? It's the frickin' apocalypse. Guy's a little on edge after finding a nurse friend is dead and his colleague's gone off to die in the radioactive cinder that used to be his hometown. He could be swatting imaginary spiders and I wouldn't blink right now. Steven's ready to take him and Denise home, but you know what's really sad, too? As far as nuclear war film and television goes, you can probably refer to this one as the optimistic film. This movie shook people up badly at the time, and it was actually rather mild, all things considered. The film even ends with a message that the events of an actual nuclear war would probably be a lot worse. And of course we would soon all be ruled by damn dirty apes. So, Denise is near death. Steven shows he's going to be there soon. That about rounds this out. Let's see, we've got Mrs. Bedsheet's annoying daughter, Dr. Punk the Blind, and John Lithgow's entourage seeming to be the only ones who haven't been killed by the war, or the survivors of the war. The first two assumes the squatters don't raid the house and kill them, of course. The only real hope offered is that the pregnant woman seen throughout the movie finally gives birth, and that is something. The aforementioned threads was so dark that, in a similar scene, when the new mother was cutting the umbilical cord with her teeth, for a moment, just a moment, I wasn't sure that she wasn't trying to eat the baby alive because she was so mad from starvation. So believe me, this movie really is sunshine and rainbows by comparison. Dr. Oakes has arrived in Kansas City, seeing the place is now a rubble-filled wasteland. Some guy's trying to steal the jewelry off a corpse, and Oakes is aghast. Yet, how can you really pass judgment? How can you judge things with old morality when horizon to horizon is a sign of such overwhelming death, and that is just one small sample of what has occurred all over the world? If by robbing the dead you can get some food or medicine to survive, can we really pass judgment any more on people in such a world? Like I said, the bombs didn't just kill humanity by killing humans. It killed those aspects of us that made us as a species worthwhile. Our intelligence gave our noblest aspects the ability to shine through, but it allowed our darkest impulses to ultimately snuff that out. Oakes finally makes it to the remnants of his home, and when he hears the sound of someone else, he believes for a moment that it's his wife, the crazed hope of a man near the end who desperately wants something to be true no matter how illogical it might be. It's just another collection of squatters, and to show how the madness is taken over, he orders them to get out of his house. One of the squatters instead offers to share some food with him, but with Oakes collapsing, he offers the comfort of another human presence. Two men united in a moment of shared loss and having the strength to finally weep over it for just a little while. Following the film was a discussion on nuclear policy and nuclear weapons that was hosted by Ted Koppel, who interestingly started by stating that for him this was like a Christmas carol. With having seen this, the question asked in the comfort of our bedrooms is whether this is a vision of what will be or of what might be. It was amusing in a sad kind of way when he addressed that to the then Secretary of State, who answered, "Neither. It is our policy not to have a nuclear war, and we have these nuclear weapons to make sure that it can't happen." Which kind of showed he missed the point, that regardless of what one thinks of the idea of deterrence, it is impossible for you to say that it can't happen while keeping around the very means to allow it to happen. That is like saying it is impossible for robots to rise up and kill us all because of the army of giant robots we have to protect us. Reagan mentioned in his book that he was shocked and concerned that some of his military advisors thought a nuclear war was winnable, and that there were some on the Soviet side who agreed with that. That's why this is not a political issue. Despite how many accusations can be made or what our knee-jerk reactions might be, coming out against nuclear war doesn't put you on the right, the left, the middle, any of that. I'm also not advocating anything. I am not saying that deterrence will or won't work, because I honestly am not sure if we have survived because of or despite it. It feels to me that it is like we as a species have accidentally pulled the pin on a grenade. We're not sure we can put it back in. We know we better not drop it. We can only just hope that someday the brain that figured out how to make that grenade can somehow figure out a way to save us from it.
They were told not to harm the grass of the earth or any green tree.